So when Lieutenant Colombo shows up at a crime scene, the first thing that he does is gather the facts. Right.
Like any good detective.
Yeah. So in the same way, sometimes you'll need more information before you can proceed in a conversation. Right? Again, don't just make assumptions without understanding where the person is coming from. You need to gather information.
Yeah.
And so the best first question, this is the queen of all questions, I would say, in his approach here, is you say, the question is, what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. Right? What do you mean by that? Now notice how that takes the pressure off of you. Right?
Yeah.
You know, they've made a claim, right? And so now you're just asking, okay, well, what do you mean by that?
Right.
Yeah. And so he says this is the best first question that, so put that one away, put that in our quiver there, and we can pull that out really quickly. And it allows now us to do all kinds of things that he's going to explain to us here as we go through this. Right?
Our awkward 15-year-old conversation, all his were questions of, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by, which God are you talking about? What do you mean by God? What do you mean by not logically?
Or reasonable, that kind of stuff.
The person on the bus. What do you mean by God can't preserve his word?
Yeah.
So those are all those things. He's going in and he's being his Columbo, and he's asking those questions. So there are kind of examples that he gives here, and to help illustrate the gathering.
What do you mean by that?
The gathering information. So someone might ask you, do you believe in evolution? So your rejoinder would be, what do you mean by evolution? Right. And it's not disingenuous.
Right.
They could be asking about something completely off topic. Yeah. It helps to steer the conversation into a better form for you, as far as like, well, okay, are you asking about microevolution, macro, solar? That simple question has a lot of baggage behind it, and so you're asking, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by evolution? And that helps to clarify where that person's coming from and why they might even be asking that question. Do you take the Bible literally? Well, that depends on what you mean by literally. What specifically were you thinking of? So again, just a different way of saying, what do you mean by literally? Mm-hmm. Great thing, and especially that question, because straw mans abound within that question. Science has proven there is no God. Really? Precisely how did science do that? If you've read with us through How to Be an Atheist, you know the issues with that. But maybe they have a specific area that they want to bring up, and so you might be better prepared to answer that specific thing than talk about, well, scientists come up with theories, and it's really hard for them to disavow their theories because they came up with it, and they have a presupposition involved. So allow them to answer the question, what do you mean by that?
And you might even, as he said earlier in the previous chapter, you might get an education out of this, right? I mean, it's okay if, you learn some things along the way as you're working your way through these questions.
Right. Asking these questions isn't invasive. It's not accusatory. It's asking for more information, helping to clarify, and you're steering the conversation where you want it to go. That's all the purpose of the Columbo tactic, because that's exactly what Lieutenant Columbo does. Mm-hmm. Or the final one, abortion is okay because fetus is a human, but not a person. Really? What's the difference between the two? And that is a big one. Nancy Pearcey in Love Thy Body really hones in on that separation as well. So asking a clarifying question to that might allow you to utilize information learned in her book there.
Yeah, good. And so notice all of these are kind of versions of what do you mean by that, right? Yeah. I mean, it applies to the specific question, but you're still really asking the same question. What do you mean by that? Yeah. So once you get that in your head as your initial, salvo into the conversation, that will be helpful. Now, what he says next is, don't be surprised when your question, what do you mean by that, is met with a blank stare, right? And crickets.
Or someone uses that on you.
Yeah. So he's going to talk to us about that in a later chapter. But he says, people don't know oftentimes what they mean much of the time, right? Often they're merely repeating a slogan. that they've heard, that kind of stuff. And so, asking a question is the simplest way to kind of clear up the confusion, right? Confusion that they might have, and then the confusion that you would have in terms of trying to understand what they're trying to say. So it also gives you time to, size up the situation and gather your thoughts and that sort of thing. So we want the issues to be clear, right? So that everybody, it's kind of like working through a problem by putting everything on the table so that we can all take a look at it, right? So it's not ugly, it's not mean. You're not trying to make the person look silly or dumb or whatever, that sort of thing. We're trying to just clear up the issue. What do you mean by that, right? And if it's a slogan that they've, heard and that sort of thing and have never thought through, this is an opportunity now for you to minister to them in terms of helping them to think through exactly, what does that mean that they have just said, right?